But if this is an important hire, this is what sales management takes. Is your selling done by phone? Is it in person? Is it done mostly by video-based selling? Is it done mostly by a written response to requests for proposals or a bidding process? So knowing who you need to have includes how do you go about selling to whom? And these are questions that help you figure out what type of salesperson do I need?
Maui Mastermind presents the Business Coach Podcast, answering your questions and providing real actionable insights for building a better, stronger, more profitable business without sacrificing your time, life, or freedom anymore.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of The Business Coach. In this episode, I want to talk about what are the concrete secrets, the insider knowledge about making your first successful sales hire and getting this salesperson out there profitably producing for your company. Now, when you think about it, this episode is definitely for you if one of the following is true. If currently the owner are the primary person doing the selling for the company, if you're responsible for 60, 70% or more of your sales, and you want to start getting other people to effectively and successfully sell for you, then this week's episode is going to be very important for you. If you recently have made your first or even your second sales hire, but you don't have a defined sales management process in place, this episode is going to give you the shoring up, the support that you need to help those initial sales hires be successful and for the company to profit from their efforts. So if you're early in that, this is who it's best for. Now, if you're someone who has a robust management system for your sales force, you're probably beyond what we're going to talk about in this episode. But I've got a lot of clients who the owner moves from having sales happen from their efforts to having more of a salesperson or sales force stepping into doing more and more of those selling. And the way they do it is haphazard. They have successes and failures, but they don't really have rhyme or reason behind it. There's no process. There's no management system or structure behind it. So let me walk you through these 7 here as we go through it. So the first piece is to be really, really clear on the who you actually need to hire. So there are different types of salespeople. Do you need someone who's more of a hunter, who's out there to find new opportunities? Do you need someone who's more of a farmer, who will take your existing accounts and to grow and deepen the relationships, the roots of these relationships, to get lots of repeated crops of sales from the same companies or customers that you work with? That would be more of an account management type of sale. Do you have more of a technical sales role that you need someone who can connect with someone on an engineering side and sell technical to technical? Are you needing someone who's going to be heavy on the prospecting side themselves? Do you have needs for just someone who's a really strong closer because you have plenty of incoming leads, but you need a strong closer who isn't going to prospect, but he or she is going to take existing leads and in a 1, 2, or 3 conversation way, close a high percentage of them. So knowing who you need. Now you might say, well, David, how do I know who I need? Well, you have to think about what is the actual sales function you have. The big way to ask that question is this person going to have to go find their own sales opportunities? Or does your business already have enough sales opportunities coming into for you? If you have enough sales opportunities internally, are those coming through in preset sales appointments? Or are they in more of a database form that there's plenty of people to go out and market to within this pool of database, but the person's going to have to be able to do some of their own internal prospecting inside the database? Is your selling done by phone? Is it in person? Is it done mostly by video-based selling? Is it done mostly by a written response to requests for proposals or a bidding process? So knowing who you need to have includes how do you go about selling to whom? And these are questions that help you figure out what type of salesperson do I need? And then run it by your informal mentor group, or if you're fortunate enough to work with a business coach, ask him or her, your coach, hey, this is the type of salesperson I think I need. Do you agree? Do you see it differently? Sometimes it's really easy. A client comes to me and they say, hey, David, I really think what I need is I need a great person to close business for me. I ask a few follow-up questions like, who are they going to be closing? And tell me a little bit about your lead flow. And what I really determine for them, I say, look, you don't need a closer. Right now, you need somebody who can actually go out there and stir up the business. You need somebody who can do prospecting. You need a hunter out there doing the prospecting side. Yes, they need to have a reasonable strength to close, but you can't work for just that specialist. You need more than just that specialist. So knowing who to hire is the first one. Part of that says, when I go to hire, I'm just going to share the second secret, which is hire in multiples. Multiples. Never hire just one if you can. Hire two, hire three. Why? Multiples. Never hire just one if you can. Hire two, hire three. Why? Because it takes the same amount of effort almost. It takes probably 1.4 times as much energy to train two people as it does to train one. You get a real economy of scale. But you say, well, David, it's expensive. Well, let's just think about this for a moment. Most salespeople are going to be on a spectrum where they're going to have, probably depending on the type of salesperson, they might have some base component to it, but a lot of what they're going to make is what we'll call variable, right? Variable would include commissions. Variable would include hitting sales targets and making bonuses. Variable could include other types of performance-based compensation. Now, most salespeople who get a base, that base is going to be no more than about 50 to 60% of what their ultimate earnings are going to be in most cases. Sometimes you might see that number go as high as 70 to 80% from that part, but most are going to be probably more toward the downside. So what that means is, when I hire in multiples, think about this. I'll give you some more thoughts about this in a moment. But in most cases, my experience has been, and this is not just directly for companies I've owned, but for coaching a lot of different companies, that usually they determine if that salesperson is doing the right things from the start. You can get a sense for, out of the new sales hires, within 30 to 90 days, it's obvious to find those that are obvious dogs, those that are not the right fit for the company. So now if I've hired two or three of them, generally speaking, one of them is going to fail out within 30 to 90 days if I set it up the right way. Not to set them up to fail, but to set it up so that I capture or I spot the dog early. The worst thing you could do is to be paying a poor salesperson for 6 or 12 months because their only thing that they're good at selling is you on keeping them and not firing them. And the reason comes into number 3 here that we'll talk about here right now. But as I point this out, when I hire multiples, I might only have the double base salary for 2 months, 4 months. If the person isn't going to make the grade, I'll find out early, and now I've hedged my bets. This is really important if this is an early sales position hire for you. If you've already got a sales force and you've got 8 people on your sales team, and over the years you've had 10, 15, 20 people who've sold for you, and 8 currently sell for you, hiring one more salesperson is easy for you to do because you know really what you're looking for and you have some management accountability system in place for new sales hires. But you probably don't have that if this is the first or the second sales hire that you want. Which now brings me to the third secret here, which is to get very clear on the behavioral metrics that show that this salesperson is going to win. For example, let's say you're a manufacturer and you're going to bring on your first business development salesperson. This person's going to have kind of a little bit of a generalist flavor to it. They're going to need to be fairly good about generating their own leads and their own prospects, progressing sales opportunities. They probably are going to be so-so at closing, not their biggest strength, because you're getting more of a generalist with a little bit leaning more toward the prospecting and the lead cultivation side. So I might say to this person, hey, Joe, you're going to be successful in this role when you come in. Here's my expectations. It's going to be within 2 weeks. I expect you to be up to speed on a base level of product knowledge, of company knowledge. You're going to have some base level of knowledge so you can get going. By week number 3, you're going to be doing things like adding every single week 25 to 50 new prospects to the CRM. And I would expect for you to make an average of 25 plus outreaches per day of prospecting conversations. And I would expect that once you get going, certainly by week number 10 and beyond, that you're going to be finding a way to get yourself 7 to 10 plus meetings in the middle of your sales funnel with people. And I believe if you are going to be doing this by week 15 and beyond, you're going to be making 1 to 2 sales per week, pushing that up over time to 2 to 3 per week. This is what I'm looking for you to do. Now, by the way, what I've just laid out here is made up, but it's made up based off of if you, the owner, have been doing the selling, you should have some understanding of what would it take numbers-wise and behaviors-wise to successfully sell what you have. And so now notice what I did here is I laid out realistic expectations for onboard training, for how quickly I want them to be in sales activities, what those sales activities look like. So now what I can do from these parts is I can do secret number 4, which is now I can shrink and make visible. What do I mean by shrink and make visible? I can make the behaviors not, here's what you do every month, but here's what you do this week, this day. So I shrink them. And I make them visible because I can make obvious in our database, hey, how many did you add this week? I can see that you've only added 12. What happened this week? How can we add more next week? Again, you need to do your research. You need to be on the LinkedIn groups. You need to be at the different industry trade shows. You need to be paying attention with some online research and searching. You need to leverage ChatGPT to do some lead list pulling for you. You might even need to talk with some information brokers to get some curated lead lists for this. And what you're doing here is you're saying, this is visible. Hey, I looked in the database, you made 30 outbound phone calls and emails today for prospecting. Great job. I just want to say you did a great job today. I'm curious, of those, which was the one you felt best about, right? It's visible. They know that you see what they do, and they have an agreement about what the behaviors are, that if they do the behaviors over time, the right behaviors, the right way will lead to a good result or better. So you've shrunk the unit of accountability. It's no longer that you're going to wait till the end of the month to see how they're doing. Hey, how was this month? I'll wait till the end. No, I want to look at daily behaviors. I want to look at the most weekly behaviors for that part. And you might say, well, David, that requires an awful lot of attention to manage them. And the answer is, if you've set your systems up the right way, it does take more attention than to look at it once a month when you're looking at it daily and weekly. But if this is an important hire, this is what sales management takes. And realistically, if I've got 1 or 2 salespeople and I'm looking at their daily and weekly behaviors this way, provided I have a reasonable setup of my CRM system itself, it might take me less than an hour a day. And that hour a day means it increases probably 3-fold, if not 5-fold, the odds of that salesperson being successful. I had a client who was telling me, David, I evaluated my brand new sales hires' performance at the end of 6 months. He gave them a 6-month period with no supervision whatsoever. In my world, that is literally insane. You might as well go ahead and just write the check for the 6 months of salary and then light the check on fire, because your odds of success are very low with that. If he had just taken the time to get clear on what are the behavioral metrics that lead to sales success in this role at this time for your company, and then find a way to make those metrics, behaviors, visible, and looking at those daily and weekly, really important with that. That's point number 5 says, and this is a little bit different from that, but point number 5, or secret number 5, says that I want to be doing reviews with and about my salesperson. To our Business Coach podcast listeners and viewers, I wanted to just for a moment here pause and tell you about a brand new tool that we've taken about 1.5 years to create. It's called the Ultimate Business Owner's Toolkit. And in there you'll find 6 of the best, most popular tools that we've created for use with our business coaching clients to help you scale your company, to make it more profitable, and quite frankly, to make it more of a joy to own. All the tools are right there with really short and simple 5 to 10 minute introductory teaching videos that show you exactly how to use those tools to get them producing for you and for your company today. So for information about more of that, you can see the show notes, or you can go to mauimastermind.com and go to the resources section and get your copy of that toolkit and get access to that now. With that said, let's get back into the podcast. Now, if it's a new hire, I'm going to formally check in my own self, have an appointment at the 30-day mark, at the 90-day mark, the 180-day mark, and at the 365 mark. Thereafter, I'm probably going to be looking at that once per quarter thereafter in years 2 and beyond. A formal review on their performance. It may or may be that I sit down and talk them through it, but at least me as the person who's responsible for managing them is going to formulate it. Why? Because, again, the big mistake I see people make is they don't know who to hire, so they hire whoever sells themselves best on the job interview. And they hire one person. And then they keep that person for 6 or 12 or even 18 months beyond when they know this person is not the right fit. They've never set up any behavioral metrics. They've never found a way to make behaviors visible and to shrink the units of accountability. They do none of that. And so it's not the cost of the salesperson, the base that they're paying. Their real cost is 10, 50 times that in terms of the opportunity cost they've lost because this person's not going to be successful. The best way to increase your odds of making that early sales hire successful is to follow the steps that you see here. These are the things that will make the biggest early differences. Now, I've got 2 more quote-unquote secrets that I want to add to this list. But as I add these to the list, what I want to do is that if you did just these 5, by the way, just these 5 makes a huge difference, But I want to give you 6 and 7 because I want you to be even more successful. If I were your coach, I would say number 6 would be the actual sales process itself. And so you're going to do your sales process in iterations, version 1, version 2, or 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. You're going to do this in iterations. So the most basic version of your sales process is, how do you currently sell? So let's say for years you run a contracting business and you, the owner, go out and listen to what the customer wants, and then you do an estimation of what your cost is going to be, then you mark it up a certain percentage, and then you go back to the homeowner and have a conversation, and that's your sales process. Great. Document what your current sales process is, step back and ask, what are some obvious ways to make that process better? Well, obvious ways to make that process better might include a better markup on it. Right now, you might have historically given yourself a markup. If it was going to cost you to build that new addition $100,000, you might put your bid in at $140,000, which is a 20%, 30%, 40% markup, but not nearly enough in that space. And so you might come back and say, I'm going to set at a minimum a 50% a 33% markup. So that $100,000 cost, I'm going to come in at that number at 150 or above, right? That could be an example of an improvement to the system. You might also want to have a simple sales brochure would be good, or a sales paperwork, a better sales contract that's standardized, right? Your first version is probably going to have some form of a script. It's going to have some form of sales paperwork, whether that's digital or physical, doesn't matter. And that's probably what version 1.0 is. Version 2.0 might have other things like case studies or client testimonials of successful people, or common objections with how they should handle and overcome those objections. Version 3.0 might have, hey, if these were the 2 most common objections, let's improve our scripting not to handle or overcome the objection. Let's either harness the energy of the objection to close on the objection, or let's preempt the objection from coming up to begin with at all. So if you do it in iterations, a sales process says, how can the salesperson doing these behaviors do these steps better? What's your scripting for doing a cold call? What's your scripting for doing a software demo? What's your scripting for how to do an in-person deep dive discovery meeting with somebody? Now, over time, if the owner are a great salesperson, it's probably easier for you to develop that. But let's say, David, I have no clue how to do this. David, I've never been a good salesperson. It's always been the weak link in my business. Great. Then when you hire that first 1 or 2 salespeople, you look at what did they do, and then you model their success, and that becomes your version 1.0. That becomes your version 2.0. That becomes your version 3.0. And somewhere along the way, you're hiring a formal sales manager, and then he or she are going to come back and make version 4.0 and version 5.0 better and better. So that 3 years from now, 7 years from now, when you're now at 4 salespeople with your manager, you have a much more robust, effective, powerful sales process and system involved with that. So again, who are we going to need to hire? Hire in multiples. What are the behavioral metrics that if they did these behaviors would give the best chance for them being successful in this sales role for your company? How can I make these things visible and shrink the units of accountability to daily behaviors or weekly behaviors? How can I make sure that I incrementally do reviews with them on a formal basis, whether it's with them or just independently, at the 30-day mark, having 15 minutes to go through and say, what's their performance actually like? Are they showing that they're going to be able to be successful in this sales role for us? Are there any red flags that I've been ignoring? What do I have to deal with? Should I even keep this person, or should I cut my losses now? Doing that at the 30, 90, 180, and 365-day mark, and then thereafter quarterly. Number 6 said, give them a sales process. Give them a sales process. The final secret in this part here is to know when to bring in a sales manager. Can I just please stop you from making the single biggest mistake that I watch people make about bringing in a sales manager? They have one sales hire, it goes through, then they get a second salesperson. And what they do is they make the first salesperson the manager for this other salesperson. They give them a new title, and invariably it is a crap show. Invariably it doesn't work. The things that you need in a sales manager are different than what you need in a great sales performer. They're different. Most sales managers are good salespeople, but they're not necessarily star salespeople. Why? Because most sales managers don't love actually doing the selling. They would much prefer to manage, to train, to hire, to inspire. But the actual going out there and dealing with rejection, they don't want to do anymore. And ironically, most sales managers make less money than sales stars. In companies that are client companies that we coach, I can point to sales stars that will make $150,000 a year, $300,000 a year, $500,000 a year as a sales superstar, where the manager might be making half to maybe 2/3 of that amount or less even. So the sales stars will make more money than probably anyone else in your company, with a few C-suite executives possibly. And the people who want to be sales managers generally are good at sales, but they're not your best stars. And to take a sales star and make them a manager is a step backwards. And then to correct that, you often lose the production of that sales star. It's a mistake. So what I would share with you is that sometimes it's best with a sales manager to look for ways that I can incrementally find that sales manager. So if I have one salesperson, I might be the one that needs to manage them initially. So I might leverage my executive assistant to line up the daily numbers. Hey, every day I want to know, how did Sheila do? I want to know how many contacts did she add to the CRM the day before? How many outbound touches did she make in the CRM? How many second stage meetings did she have? And I want to know how many third stage or closing stage meetings she has set for this week. I want you to give that to me in a summary email every single day on my desk, every single day. I look at that here today. I now reach out. Hey, Sheila, I notice X, Y, and Z. Way to go. Hey, Sheila, I notice X, Y. Way to go. But what happened with Z here? What can I do to support you in Z? Right, that daily feedback. So I can get some help so that I can handle the rest of that sales management. By the way, as you're doing that, you're actually building a sales management process. Now, it doesn't make sense to have a full-time sales manager to manage one salesperson. That's insane. That's bad business. So what it might be is internally, your current people are going to have to find enough space and attention to do that. Or you might find a way to find a fractional sales manager. Generally speaking, you're not going to need a full-time sales manager until you've reached 4 or more salespeople. Oftentimes, it's not until you reach 6 or more salespeople that you're going to need that full-time salesperson. You might say, well, David, can I have a selling sales manager? That's going back to the person who's both selling and managing. I think that's a mistake. What you can do, that might work is you might make Sheila, when you have your second sales hire, Jody, you might say, hey, Sheila, I want you to play a mentoring role with Jody. We're just going to do that over the course of the first 90 days of her hire. And I want you to help train her on this, and this. Can you do that for me as a sales mentor? Great. And just to make it, to say thank you, as you do that, I'm going to pay you an extra $1,500 a month just to do that with her. Notice I made it temporary so that if Sheila is not good at it, I don't have any long-standing commitment. If she's great at it, maybe I say, hey, I want you to keep going on with this, and I can pay her some fashion for that. Notice it's not for her managing the whole, she's just helping with a piece of it. Later on, maybe now I have another salesperson, I say, hey, I want you to continue to play the sales mentor role, and what I'm asking for you to do is to meet with each of them once per week, one-to-one, and to do one group training of the two of them once per week. And in return for doing that, each month I'm going to pay you an extra $2,500 a month. And that's what I'm doing for that for 30 grand a year of extra compensation for you, right? So you can do that, but notice I've gotten pieces of that management off, not all at once. But at some point, now I've got my fourth sales hire, I might very well say, hey, you're going to be one of the people helping us to make the call and the decision on this, but we're going to be looking truly for an outside sales manager to come in to support each of you to help you be more successful so that you can earn more money and get better results for the company and for yourself. Notice how we frame that. So again, who is it you need? What kind of salesperson doing what sales function? Always hire in multiples with those early sales hires. Not that you've got to keep them forever, but if you hire in multiples, you reduce your training cost and you have a little bit of insurance, because oftentimes you'll have a failure within 30, 60, 90 days where you're going to have to let one of them go. What are the behavioral metrics that will lead to success in this role over time? And how do I make them visible and shrink the units of accountability? Ideally, each day they know and you know what was done. No more than a week goes by without having that visible unit of accountability. Having formalized incremental reviews to step back and say, was this the right hire? 30-day, 90-day, 180-day, 365-day mark, then quarterly thereafter. Number 6 says, how can I process out? Give them a process to follow, and that process to follow to sell is going to be incrementally and iteratively improved. Version 2.0, version 3.0, version 4.0. And then finally, when and how do I deal with sales management? To just put the salesperson on her own, step back and 6 months later say, let's see how she did, that is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for not just wasting money, but losing massive opportunity time where you could have been having compounding growth in your result. All right. So I want you, as your coach, I want you to pause and ask 2 questions. Question number 1, which of these 7 secrets are you ignoring that most currently cost you with your current sales team? You might say, David, I'm guilty of 6 of the 7 I made mistakes on. Okay, which one cost you the most for not having done? And whatever that is, step 2, ask yourself now, how can you do that missing piece better over the next 30 to 90 days? What are the simple steps you could take over the next 30 to 60 days to start doing that secret that you've identified as the most costly that you've been ignoring, to do it the right way? And I guess the last message I'll leave you with is doing this the right way. It does take a bit more investment, but you're going to increase your odds of success so that your salespeople start fundamentally succeeding without you having to be the one doing so much of the selling. And over time, you can then build on that and getting even more sales, less dependent on you, letting you, the owner, now focus on other parts of the business to make the company more scalable, more durable, more successful. And that's going to make owning the business a much more enjoyable thing, and the business will become more valuable over time. Thank you for joining me for this week's podcast. I hope you took away some good ideas. Bye-bye.